Are you nervous yet? Brought to you by Shyloh Kirksey,
Tran-Nguyen,
Alex Jurovich,
and Maxis Stephen Lemon IV.
Allow us to teach you all of the nervous system in 15 minutes. Now, the first thing that you need to know about the nervous system is that it's broken up into two parts. There's the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is a complex system of nerve tissues that receives and processes nearly all information in the body. In vertebrates, the CNS consists of the brain, spinal column, and the retina. The second part, the peripheral nervous system, consists of the nerves and ganglia, a structure containing a number of nerve cell bodies, on the outside of the brain and the spinal cord. The main function of the PNS is to connect the CNS to the limbs and organs, serving as a communication relay for information to the spinal cord. Unlike the CNS, the PNS is not protected by the bone of spine or skull and is thus susceptible to mechanical injuries and toxins. The PNS is divided into two parts, the somatic nerve system and the autonomic nerve system. The somatic nerve system, SONS, is composed of afferent nerves and efferent nerves. Afferent send information from the body to the CNS, while efferent send information from the CNS to the body, stimulating muscle contraction. The autonomic nerve system, also known as the visceral nerve system, influences the function of internal organs. The autonomous nerve system operates mostly unconsciously, hence the name, and regulates a variety of bodily functions, including heart rate, digestion, respiratory rate, urination, and sexual arousal. And here you can see both the CNS and the PNS. The central nervous system is shown in orange and the peripheral nervous system is shown in blue.
The sensory nervous system is a component of the CNS, and it is responsible for processing all sensory information. It is comprised of 6 subsystems. The visual system detects and processes information gathered from visible light. Light that enters the eye organ is refracted as it passes through the cornea, the transparent front layer of the eye, and then through the circular opening which is the pupil and is further refracted by the lens. The cornea and lens act together to project an image on the retina, an inner layer at the back of the eye which contains photoreceptor cells, cells that contain protein molecules known as opsins which are necessary for vision. Then, the optic nerve transmits the information from the retina to the optic chiasm, a region at the base of the hypothalamus, a portion of the brain that connects the nervous system to the pituitary gland, or hypophysis, which is completely irrelevant to my 15 minutes, so moving on. There, at the optic chiasm, the optic nerves meet so that the visual information is combined and then split up again, where the right eye information is transmitted on the left optic tract, the transport vessel, as well as the left eye information on the right optic tract, until both tracts reach the lateral geniculate nucleus, a sensory relay in the hypothalamus that uses optic radiations on both sides of the brain, which process and relay the visual information to the visual cortex, the largest portion of the human brain responsible for, sight. Adaptations for the visual system include an adaptation to reduce light intensity, where the size of the pupil may contract or dilate depending on the light intensity, and an adaptation for depth perception increasingly improving as humans reach adolescence. The auditory system is the sensory system responsible for hearing. It is comprised of the outer, middle, and inner ear. Sound waves are reflected off the pinna, folds of cartilage in the outer ear, and enter the auditory canal, a canal that begins from the hole in your ear. The sound waves continue along the canal, becoming increasingly amplified until they hit the tympanic membrane or eardrum, arriving at the middle ear. In the middle ear cavity, the sound waves are transformed into stimuli vibrating through the malleus, incus, and stapes, and converted into nerve impulses in the cochlea in the inner ear. The cochlea is a spiral-shaped cavity that contains the organ of Corti, which converts the sound waves into nerve signals. These nerve signals travel through the vestibulocochlear nerve to the cochlear nucleus. There, they get processed by other neural structures such as the superior olivary complex in the brainstem and the inferior colliculus in the midbrain. They are finally relayed to the thalamus and are processed by the auditory cortex where the product, sound perception, occurs. And that, boys and girls, is how you hear sound. One adaptation of the auditory system is that particularly loud noises cause a small muscle in the ear to contract, reducing the transmission of sound vibrations to the inner ear. The somatosensory system is responsible for the sense of touch. Unlike the first two systems, the somatosensory is spread throughout the body through nerve cells like sensory receptors and other sensory neurons in the skin, muscles, and organs. The skin, in fact, is the largest organ in the human body, and it protects the body, helps regulate body temperature and maintain homeostasis, keeps people from looking like a demented horror film, and allows for the sense of touch. The skin is comprised of 3 layers of connective tissue: epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. Somatosensory pathways throughout the body typically have 3 neurons, the first inside a spinal nerve, the second in the spinal cord or the brainstem, and the third in the thalamus, located near the center of the brain, whose function is to regulate consciousness and alertness. An adaptation for the sense of touch is tanning. Photoreceptors detect ultraviolet radiation, inducing increased production of melanin, the pigment that controls skin color, and offering the skin protection from damage caused by ultraviolet radiation, particularly sunburn. The vestibular system works in conjunction with the other sensory systems to create the sense of balance and regulate coordination. The system is comprised of the anterior, posterior, and horizontal semicircular canals, all three of which detect rotations of the head in the sagittal and coronal planes of the body. The system also has two otolithic organs located within the inner ear, the ultricle and saccule, patches of hair cells and receptors that detect acceleration in the body. The vestibular system is why people innately try to catch themselves when falling, and it's how DiCaprio got out of limbo after inceptioning his crazy wife.
The gustatory system consists of the sense of taste, which goes through the tongue. The tongue contains thousands of papillae, which contain hundreds of taste buds and taste receptor cells each. The taste itself varies by the chemicals the taste receptors receive. The 5 basic receptors include salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and savory. The olfactory system constitutes the sense of smell. The nose is the primary organ involved in the olfactory system. Smell is transported through the nostrils via respiration. Cilia within the nose turn the smell into electric pulses, which are received by trigeminal nerves in the somatosensory system. The olfactory bulb, a neural structure, transmits the pulses to cells that determine the odor for later recognition. Working with the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for emotion and memory, the olfactory bulb recognizes and discerns various odors from another and associates odors to certain memories and feelings.
The plight of the stimulus. Stimulated neurons send signals to other cells through thin fibers called axons, which cause chemicals known as neurotransmitters to be released at junctions called synapses. A synapse gives a command to the cell, and the entire communication process typically only takes a fraction of a millisecond.
Connections between the nervous system and other body systems. The nervous system actually works with every other body system.
Whoa.
The main way the nervous system is connected to other body systems is through the central nervous system, or CNS, sending signals telling them how to act, like electrical impulses being sent from the brain dictating how the muscular system moves. The skeletal system protects major nerve groupings from injury. The vertebrae protect the spinal cord. The skull protects the brain and optic nerves. Bones also provide calcium that nerves use in the form of calcium ions to initiate nerve signals back to the brain. The endocrine system and the nervous system control each other's development at some point in their time. Certain reproductive hormones produced by the endocrine system help guide the nervous system in development, and the hypothalamus, part of the central nervous system, controls some endocrine glands like the pituitary gland. The major aspects of the cardiovascular system, like the heart rate, are regulated by the brain. Baroreceptors, a type of nerve located in blood vessels, send information to the brain regarding blood pressure, and the brain in turn attempts to regulate it. The digestive system and nervous system also have a very two-sided relationship. The digestion process provides some materials necessary for the creation of neurotransmitters, and the autonomic nervous system controls the rate of digestion. Also, the brain controls eating and drinking behaviors. The integumentary system houses nerve endings which give us our sense of feel when they relay sensory information to the brain. The autonomic nervous system also controls sweat glands, which are located in the integumentary system. The brain can stimulate the lymphatic system to enable mechanisms to fight infection. The brain regulates respiratory rate, volume, and blood gas levels in the respiratory system. Hormones from the reproductive system affect the development of the brain, and in turn the brain regulates mating behaviors. The major action of the urinary system, urination, is also controlled by the brain. These examples show how important the brain is to other body systems, and how other body systems can affect the development of the nervous system, and especially the brain.
Comparison to other animals. The earthworm similarities. Earthworms are sensitive to similar stimuli like light, touch, and temperature. The worm has the central nerve cord, which is similar to our spine in most of its duties except for the ones that fall into the skeletal system. The brain in the earthworm serves as similar purposes, sending and receiving signals. The earthworm differences. The nervous system of the earthworm is a lot less complex than a human and segmented with different major parts. While the earthworm is still sensitive to smell and sight, it has neither a nose nor eyes to help it gain more information from those signals for the brain to process. The brain that the earthworm does have is called a cerebral ganglion, and while it serves similar purposes in the autonomic nervous system, it cannot commute the same amount of information. Fish similarities. Fish can respond to fear and pain. They have a brainstem, olfactory bulb, cerebellum, cerebrum, pituitary gland, and pineal gland just like us. Humans and fish have a certain feature in the brain that's alike. The ability to direct visual attention at a certain target in order to achieve that goal, and to ignore all other distractions as stimuli that prevent them from reaching that goal. Differences. Humans have a much more highly developed cerebral cortex. The cerebellum is the biggest structure in the fish's brain, while in humans it only takes up about 15%. Fish have more highly developed sensory organs like the olfactory senses and visual receptors. Connecting the forebrain to the midbrain is the dicephalon, which performs functions related to maintaining homeostasis. We lack this structure in humans. Sharks specifically. While sharks are a type of fish, their case is special when it comes to the nervous system. They have highly developed senses that allow them to do extraordinary things. Sharks possess pores around their face called ampullae of Lorenzi, which contain conductive jelly and cilia and detect electric charges sent out by other organisms. Most fish have what is called a lateral line system, which consists of a bunch of hair-like projections from the skin and called canals filled with fluid that detect water movement and pressure. This system also helps the shark famously be able to smell blood from great distances, but also to find a mate in their giant environment they live in. Dogs similarities. Dogs have similar CNS as well as a similar PNS with basically the same organs with different proportions. Like humans, dogs have distinct parts of the brain controlling different functions. The spinal cord, cerebellum, and cerebrum are all in both organisms. Both organisms share other main organs like ears, eyes, noses, taste buds, and the similar dermal system. Dogs' differences. The dogs can see a smaller range of colors. This is due to the presence of extra light-sensitive structures in humans that dogs lack. The dog has a better sense of smell than humans because of a better developed olfactory sense. Like humans, bats are vertebrates, making part of the CNS similar in that they have a brain leading to a spine and optic nerves. Bats have much of the same anatomy, including eyes, ears, and nose, and most of the parts of the brain, although these parts may not be in the same proportion due to need. The peripheral nervous system also follows the general mammalian pattern with certain modifications, but it includes a very similar dermal structure and nerve receptors. Bats' differences. Bats have developed modifications to the general mammalian pattern of the nervous system, mainly in the areas of echolocation and flight. There is a difference in the lower brainstem auditory pathways of all Microcheiropteera compared to humans and other animals. Changes in the temporal lobe and the organization of auditory pathways also aid in echolocation and change the bat's behavior to its surroundings. Manatees similarities. The CNS, besides many major portions of the brain, is fairly similar to the one of humans, including similar spine and eyes. Besides the tactile hairs, the dermal substance is quite similar to that of humans, and most of the peripheral nervous system is as well. The two organisms share sensory organs like the nose, mouth, ears, eyes, as well as similar parts of the brain like olfactory senses. Manatees differences. The manatee has something called tactile hairs that serve a different purpose than the hair on most other mammals. Instead of warmth, these hairs provide information sensing the movement of their surroundings. These hairs have caused many other examples of convergent evolution, and the manatee likes significantly different brain stems which receive the information from their face. They also differ from humans in that their brain stems include structures for the functional tail. The importance of the information provided by this modification is so great that in the thalamus, the sections devoted to vision are greatly diminished, providing room for the sections for somatosensation, information from the tactile hairs, and auditory sections. The endocrine is a structure only found in animals like the manatee, and is a parallel for the barrels of rodents. They are next to the auditory glands and connected, which suggests that the tactile hairs can sense low-frequency energy. Snakes similarities. Snakes share a basic reptilian nervous system, for the most part containing a spinal cord as well as a brain and eyes. They share eyes and a nose leading to the olfactory bulbs in the majority of vertebrates. Snakes' differences. Snakes do not have ears, but rather a structure on their jawbone that can sense vibrations. Snakes have scales, which works differently than our skin in interpreting temperature. Snakes can see infrared by having a membrane in things called pit organs located on the snake's face that allows them to see the heat of a living creature up to a meter away. This works differently from vision and does not work by receiving light, but rather infrared radiation that signals that there is a warm-blooded animal depending on its temperature. Snakes lack certain chemicals like oxytocin in their brain that are necessary for us. Octopus similarities. Octopi are probably the least like humans out of all the animals mentioned so far, maybe except the worm, but they still share certain things like eyes, olfactory bulbs, and a similar dermal substance. The most important similarity is the octopus's possible intelligence, which makes a possibility for a not common ancestor among intelligent life. Octopus differences. Although octopi share the fact that they have eyes, their eyes are significantly better than ours, almost camera-like. Axial nerve cords are found in tentacles and are part of the CNS. They are like spinal cords except they lack the vertebral column. This allows the tentacles to sense things tactically with chemosensation and carry out motor acts and have significantly more neurons than the brain itself. Visual stimuli for a part is processed in these nerve cords, posing a question as to how the octopus processes the information, and giving researchers hope that there's a better way to how we do it. The arms of the octopus have been proven to have its own nervous system and act to stimuli accordingly. The suckers on the arms of the octopus can almost taste the water, allowing octopi to sense chemicals in the water around them. Some octopi can camouflage to their environment depending on what stimuli they receive.
An example of a degenerative disease that affects the nervous system is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's occurs when nerve endings die, causing impaired memory and thinking. An example of a developmental disease is cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy describes a group of neurological disorders that paralyze parts of the brain due to damage or abnormalities of the brain during development. This can cause a myriad of effects, including involuntary muscle movement and coordination loss. An example of a neurogenic disease is erectile dysfunction. Erectile dysfunction affects the autonomic nervous system. Causes include an interruption in the nerve pathways from the penis to the brain. Effects include the inability to maintain an erection. Fun fact number 1. There are 1 billion neurons in the human spinal cord alone, 5 times the human population of North Korea. Number 2. The human body naturally contains an involuntary biological fight or flight function which serves as an innate response to stress and perceived dangers. This reaction begins in the amygdala, which triggers a neuroresponse in the hypothalamus. There, the pituitary gland secretes the adrenocorticotropic hormone, and the adrenal gland releases the epinephrine hormone. This results in the production of the hormone cortisol, which increases the blood pressure and blood sugar and suppresses the immune system. The cortisol transforms fatty acids into available energy. Overall, there is a rapid increase in heart and lung activity, an immediate paling or flushing of the skin, an inhibition of activity in the digestive system and in the lacrimal gland, constriction and dilation of the blood vessels, mydriasis, loss of hearing and peripheral vision, and finally, an inhibition of erection. All of these reactions are triggered in an effort to rapidly create more available energy should there be a need to flee from the danger or confront it. Here's an example. A YouTube pranker goes out to scare 5 people on Halloween night. When the YouTuber jumps out to scare them, 4 of the people run. Flight. While the 5th proceeds to violently thrash said YouTuber. Fight. The YouTuber tries to scream, "It's just a prank, bro," but is now dead. Number 3. When you get a brain freeze from eating ice cream, the world is in fact not ending. Brain freezes, or sphenopalatine ganglion neuralgia, are a nerve response that constricts and swells blood vessels, resulting in the rapid cooling and reheating of capillaries, ultimately telling you to stop eating that ice cream. And number 4, the pterygopalatine ganglia are ganglia that send signals to the lacrimal nerve and gland. They are the reason why you may cry when eating spicy food. It is said that Chuck Norris does not possess pterygopalatine ganglia,